All right, here we go. We are recording. So thank you all for coming and attending. Again, I'm going to remind you that if you want to ask any questions, because I'm going to be confusing here, I'm going to be jumping around, going like crazy like I normally do, and then I'll just try to stop every few minutes, and I'll be looking in the chat, which should be in your bottom left-hand corner if you're watching this live. If you're watching the replay, I'm sorry. Obviously, we appreciate you watching, even though you might not have been able to get here while it was live. You also can pop in if you want to turn off your mic and ask any questions. If it's burning inside of you and you just got to get it out, then you can go and turn it off and jump in. In fact, I think Jennifer just jumped in. I hear you, Jen. Hello. There, she just muted herself. All right, so what I'm doing here is I've got a project. It's a little unusual. I've got two hosts in one track. You'll see two tracks here, though, and that's not to confuse you. It's just that I have run this this original recording, which is the one that's muted. It's grayed out here in that second track. This one in the bottom is the original. I ran that through Isotope to get rid of some noises and stuff. The problem is sometimes it takes out too much noise. So I've left it here. I've brought the conditioned audio back in, put that on the top because that's where I like to work, on the top row. And from there, I'm going to, if I've got anything that I notice where one of the hosts, when he speaks, it trails off. And Isotope might think that breath, that it's a breath and it dampens it and it turns it down a lot. Well, if you can't hear what he's saying, obviously there's a problem. So I might copy what's below from the original and paste it in the top. That's unusual. It's not normal. I'm just letting you know because this is a little bit of a different situation here. All right, so let me get, here we go. I'm going to start editing now. What I'm going to do here, this is the content section, so it's a little long. Obviously, I'm not going to do the whole thing for you. I'll try to find another example we can jump to in a little bit. And this is just going to give you an idea of where I go to chop things out. How do I cut out the crap? And there's a lot of crap because this guy, the second host, he talks a mile a minute and he just doesn't let his mouth catch up to his brain. All right, so here we go.
So you can have a home.
Okay, so there's one right there. I just started. So you can have a home. So what I'd like to do is cut the so in half. I got to sync lock these tracks, keep them together. This is so. This is and then we have a second so. There. So right.
So you can have a home.
Okay, so it's Anyway, so I want to cut out the first or second so. I'm going to go ahead and just delete the second half of the first so and the first half of the second ho, which will still make it a total one so. One thing I always do is find zero crossings. I have a keyboard shortcut for that. If you don't know what zero crossings is, it's fantastic. It makes your edits clean. It will adjust, just ever so slightly, adjust the parameters of what I've selected. In fact, I'm going to zoom in real close. I'm going to find where I think it's going to be good. But when I hit that find zero crossings, one of these two sides or both sides are going to move right to where if we got really, really close into this line, you'd see where it hits the zero line, that center line there. That makes for really, really clean edits. And I did it, but it didn't really move, so I must have selected it pretty well. All right, I'm going to delete that. Zoom out. Here we go again.
So you can have a home. You could generally have a car of unlimited value.
Mm-hmm. We don't need that, so I'm going to cut out that. By the way, you're going to hear some popping noises. That's Zoom. For some reason, Zoom is feeding back this tick, 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 tick. It doesn't always do it, but for some reason, it's doing it today.
And so, and the
I don't need any of that. And so, by the way, I also have a keyboard shortcut for the play at speed. That's this little icon here, this little green button tool. And I've adjusted it to 1.35. I'm going to turn that down for you guys just because, well, it's probably going to drive some of you crazy hearing the chipmunks. But I went ahead and I turned the speed up because how do you sit there and listen to an hour-long conversation and edit it? It's going to take you 5 hours if it's like this. So I usually just speed it up, and that way I can hear most of the conversation without having to stop a lot quicker. All right, so let's get rid of that junk. Go back. I always go back a little bit just to hear. And let me zoom out a little bit to give you guys a little more reference of what I'm working on. I'll also try to keep my mouse moving around where the playhead is. That will help you to focus on where I'm working, and that will hopefully you don't get too lost.
Of unlimited value, and the reason why it's the reason why it's unlimited.
Okay, it says and twice. Sometimes I work on that. I'm not going to do it on this one.
And the reason why it's unlimited
And he
value.
says it's twice. Well, I can cut out the second it's.
And the reason why it's unlimited value is, for example,
I don't need the is, just the is.
value is, for example, I have a friend who's a paraplegic.
Don't need that.
I have a friend who's a paraplegic, but he still operates a motor.
But he still operates a motor vehicle. But he has one that he can actually, remotely enter.
Remotely enter.
Okay, let me get rid of that mumble there. I'll go back and listen again.
He can actually remotely enter, drive up in.
Don't need the
Drive up in on the side. There's no actual driver's seat. His wheelchair rolls into the driver's seat, and the
I can take out the second the. This is and the.
To the driver's seat, and the throttle, the gas pedal
I
has.
need to hear that again. Make sure that it came out right.
And the throttle, the gas.
Again, you might hear some popping noises. That's Zoom for some reason. It does that. I don't know exactly why. Let me know if you guys can hear all this okay. Is it coming through clear? Is the volume up enough? Do I need to turn my mic down or up a little bit? Tell me. Okay, I've got a few sounds goods. All right, I'm going to take a drink and continue.
And the throttle, the gas pedal has been moved up to the steering wheel where he can control acceleration and braking with his hands and things like that, right?
Awesome. And things like that, right? Awesome. Those aren't cheap. No, I can imagine.
There's an
Yeah, I mean, you can get a used Ferrari.
Okay, he says you can get a here, so I'm going to get rid of all the stuff before that, which is.
I mean, you can get a. I mean,
any of that if I've got it right here.
You can get a used Ferrari for what you could easily pay for
one of those. One of those vans.
Okay, he says one of those
vans.
All right, got to figure out where those ends. I think it's right there. So I'm taking the two, one of those, and I'm cutting the word those in half, keeping the first half of the first one, keeping the last half of the second one, and let me just see if that worked.
You could easily pay for one of those vans.
Actually, I need to cut it even more.
You could easily pay for one of those vans.
Oh, no, that didn't work. Okay, so I got to do this again. I think that's where it is.
You could easily pay for one of those vans. So, van.
Okay, I don't need that long of an S. It just doesn't sound right.
What you could easily pay for one of those vans. So, not cheap. So that's why there's.
Okay. By the way, he says so a lot. There's a lot of times when we can cut the so out at the beginning of a sentence, but you got to make sure that if you take it out, that it still sounds natural. In this situation, I really can't take it out. He says so. It's a vocal pattern of his. But I can get rid of the before his so, and you can tell where the so is. I'm going to zoom in even further. In fact, this is just the S part of the so. Oh, that's not what I wanted. There. And so this is the first part, but you can see right about here is where that so starts. That the denseness of the waveform is where that so begins. So I'm going to, again, go ahead and select all that. Hit find zero crossings to fine tune where this is going to delete. There. I don't know if you can see it. Let me go ahead and do it again. Watch. I'm going to zoom in a little more. Watch this line right here move in 3, 2, 1. Oh, well, I selected it right again. Let's try it again. Right here. 3, 2, 1. I don't know if you could tell, but it moved ever so slightly. And that, again, is bringing this edit, or everything I've selected here, brings it to the 0 line. So if we moved in even closer, let me zoom in really close. I mean, really close. You can see that's where that sound hit the 0 line. And that's also here, which, if you think of it, if you're walking down the street, you got the sidewalk and it's got the blocks. One of the blocks might be up a little bit. If it's raised or one sunken down a little bit, you might stub your toe when you trip on it. This is kind of like fine zero crossings. It's kind of like taking the two slabs and leveling them out, putting them directly in line with each other so you don't trip on it. That definitely helps with the edits. I just deleted it. Let's try it again and see what happens, or let's listen to it and see what happens.
So not cheap. So that's why there's
So that's why there.
I need to get this breath down a bit. When I reduce a breath, I like to bring it down to a negative 35 to 40. And I found with Audacity, I can just simply go up. I hit the tab key because it jumps right to the amplification number. And since I'm there, I just make it negative 12 to negative 15. That almost always brings it down to what I want it to be. And let's see if that helps this problem right here. And I might have another, in fact, I'm pretty sure I have another tip to show you on this.
So not cheap. So that's why there's.
Okay, it's still pretty hard. In fact, if I looked at it, yeah, maybe it was a little too sudden. I mean, right now, all I've got selected here is a 0.02 seconds. That's very small. So it's actually hitting a wall. Basically, the sidewalk is not lined up properly. So one trick that you can use is let's kind of bring the human ear in gradually on this so, on the word so. And let me take it back out of the spectrogram view. On the waveform view here, I find that fading in is a great resolution to this problem. So I have a keyboard shortcut for fade in, and now I'm fading in on this so. Now let's see if that helped.
So not cheap. So that's why there's essentially no limit to the.
So I think that helped.
So that's why there's essentially no limit to the value of a vehicle.
The value
I can get rid of the second D.
to the value of a vehicle.
Okay.
I don't need the okay and the because I really want to get rid of the
To the value of a vehicle. With a married couple and
His start stumble here.
Value of a vehicle. With a married couple, in certain circumstances, you might be able to exclude two vehicles. Generally, you can also exclude. Generally, you can also.
There's a lot of breath in there. I'm going to go ahead and de-amplify that. So it's a negative 12 or negative 15 if I can get it to work. There we go. It doesn't matter anything to the right of that. It's just so minute, it really doesn't matter. But I'm hitting at negative 40 with this recording. And if you listen back, you won't be able to tell that it doesn't remove the breath. What you don't want to do is silence this. Because then what happens is you've got this, ambient noise in the background when they're speaking, and all of a sudden it's dead silent. And then they come back in and it's like, whoa, what happened? So you want to leave some kind of noise there. In fact, I'll go back to spectrum view and you'll see there's still noise there, but it's very light. If I were to silence it, it'd look like that. That means there's nothing there. We don't want to do that. So put it back in waveform view.
with a married couple, in certain circumstances, you might be able to exclude two vehicles. Generally, you can also
Now there's a little mouth click there. In fact, I can see it in the original, just a mouse smack.
Generally, you can also.
There's also a problem here. I'm not sure why, but I'm going to fade in there, and it should solve the problem. I don't know if you could hear it, but I heard a little pop.
With a married couple, in certain circumstances, you might be able to exclude two vehicles. Generally, you can also exclude any prepaid
Oh boy, I got my work cut out for me.
exclude any pre. You can also exclude any prepaid burial arrangements. So if you've already taken care of your funeral, and as long as you can't get the money back, as long as there's no cash value there. Now,
Okay, I think you guys get the idea. I don't think there's really much more I can show you on this. If you guys got any questions, just type it in the chat room, or go ahead and you can unmute yourself now if you want to ask verbally. I do know there's a mouth click here or something. Yeah, let me just go ahead and take care of that while I'm here.
Now,
I didn't do it right, so let me fix it, and then I'm going to get into a different example.
now I can't tell you how many.
There, I couldn't help myself. I had to take care of it. Okay. By the way, just the way I keep my files organized, in case you guys are interested, I have a very unusual filing structure. Let me go ahead and show you that. This is one of my clients here that we're selecting. If you're not on a Mac, you may not. This is like Windows Explorer, but it's the way that a Mac displays. There's a few different ways you can display the folders, but this is one client. This is, I always keep their artwork, their show artwork here, the one that I use inside the ID3 tags, although I have a shortcut now where I barely ever use this, but that's just why that's there. Then I've got a folder, and you see I put that little tilde in front of it called asset, or the tilde there, just because I like to keep things organized, and I don't want anything. I like the very top thing to be assets and the very bottom thing to be bookkeeping for this specific client. And inside the assets, I've got different images that we might use for audiograms and things like that, information that I might keep a hold of, other bits and pieces, different various lengths of their music, because I might use little stingers between segments or just before an interview or just coming out of an interview. Got their outro, their intro, a couple different versions of that, all kinds of stuff. And then I've got like the original. I mean, I have their original artwork here. They changed it to the green one. So I've got all kinds of stuff in the what I call the assets folder. Then I've got, let me just jump to the bottom one here. The invoices is where I keep track of all the stuff. Like I just keep, I got a list of the jobs that I've done, and I keep them, just every time I complete a job, I put out whatever information is there in a Google sheet, spreadsheet, so they can keep track of it. And I keep track of when they pay. I have accounting software now, so this is kind of becoming unnecessary, but that's the way I used to do it. And then these are all the files that I just submitted payment for, and that's all the ones that I did last period and have invoiced them for. And then these here, this is going to be the episodes that I'm working on. You'll see I've got a little orange. Orange is kind of like, okay, this is, in session. Orange is like, this is the stuff, like if you see a call to action button, a lot of times it's orange. That's what orange is for. If it's done, I might make it green or something like that, but for the most part. So 073 is the episode number. They gave me the title of this episode, or at least a short description of it. Inside of that folder now, this is specific to just the episode. I've got just a text file for basic information. I'll put notes in here. I'll put their show notes if they want, that I copy and put into the MP3, stuff like that. Archive is where I keep the Audacity projects. So if I've, like this one that I've just worked on, and I save, I'm going to close it now, but that one is right here. That's this. With Audacity, you always have to keep the .aup file next to the data file. It doesn't matter where on your computer you put them, but you got to have them both. These both have to be in the same location. Otherwise, you lose your file. And don't change if you got Audacity open. I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead and show you. This is a problem with Audacity. So yes, I said there's a problem with Audacity. I'm going to just add -B to this and throw it in the archive folder. Okay. I'm zooming, so because I'm doing screen share, it's taking up a little space. All right, so I have this open now, right? Let's say I go through and I do a couple more delete, action, blah, blah, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Now, if I change this archive folder to archives, you'll notice it just went blank. Holy crap, what the heck happened? Where did all the audio go? Where is it? I can't undo, I can't do anything. It's gone. It's because now this project has lost its home. Here's the cool thing. I can just Control Z into the folder here or take out that S. Now watch what happens. There it all comes right back. Isn't that amazing? Audacity's awesome. At least that's how it works on a Mac. I'm pretty sure it works that way on Windows too. All right, I don't want to lose all that work I did, and I don't want to mess myself up. Anyway, just a little something that people get frustrated with Audacity, and that would be a reason why, for sure. Okay, so I've got the projects that I'm working on. I always just keep them here. Let me jump to, well, no, I'll go ahead and show you. For segments, this is where I keep things that are pieces of the show, of this specific episode. For instance, this one is, they've got a little disclaimer they play at the beginning. And then they've got this really cool kick-in. I'm going to go ahead and play this a little bit for you just so you can kind of hear what they have. But I don't know if this is going to get a little loud. So be ready to hit your volume controls in 3, 2, 1.
Advisors in these areas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Okay, so I've got the welcome, and they just get rocking into it. And then he says,
I'm Devin Carroll and John Ross.
Whoa, the audio is really choppy on my end. Is it on yours too?
I'm Devin Carroll, and John Ross is sitting across the desk from me again today. Hey, John.
Howdy.
So I've got that piece already done for this specific episode. I'm saving it here, and if I have any other pieces, I'll throw it in here as well. A really good example of when that comes in handy, and I'll tell you right now, it's Stacking Benjamins, because with that show, I've got all these different pieces right here. All of this. These are all different pieces that I get from different places for the Stacking Benjamins show, and it has to go into one big project like this. And some of these, let me zoom out. So like this has an announcer and music. This has a piece of music at the end. This one has music underneath what they're saying. This is Doug's trivia with music underneath. It's just, you know, these are all the pieces that I put together. And so I got to keep them organized. That's why I have a folder called segments. Let me get out of that. And then this is where I keep all the original stuff. So for example, this is the problem that the project that I was working on earlier. This is where the this is the problem file that they had. And I'll just open up a little bit of it here, and you can see after 19 minutes, it just stopped. There wasn't anything there. So I've kept that though, which is a good thing because they gave me the second one, which is, you know, they just continued on where it cut off. That's the folder structure there. Let me go into another project because I think, oh, I've got a question. Okay, Alexandra says, not sure if I'm jumping the gun, but what do you use to level out the volume with multiple segments? All right, well, this is not an Audacity tip, but I do use Levelator. Levelator is free for the Mac. I believe it also works on PC, but it's not being supported anymore, so a lot of people poo-poo the idea. I've been using it multiple times a day, and it has never failed me. However, the day that it does fail me, I'm going to Phonic. I've seen Phonic in the works. There's a webinar replay. I think it ends today. If you want the webinar replay, you need to contact me via email, steve@stevestewart.me, and I'll see if I can't get you a link to watch the Phonic webinar, which does a lot more than just level the audio. Just so you know, the procedure I use for leveling the audio, and unfortunately this is not an Audacity thing, but it's one of those audio conditioning things that I do beforehand. I always condition the audio prior to editing. And the reason for that is I don't want to put an entire episode together with music and all this stuff and then run it through a leveling process and then have it amplify the breaths, have it amplify areas where I might want it to stay a little quiet. The music might be getting a little too loud. I would rather amplify the raw file first. And that's what I've done here. You'll see this one right here I'm highlighting is the original recording I get from my client. And then I ran this through a batch process with Isotope. I know there's a lot of steps, but I run it through a batch process, and it just does the thing. And I go get a drink or whatever while I'm waiting, and then I run it through Levelator, and that gives me one more version of it. That's the dot output right here at the end, and then that's the one I edit with. So it seems like a lot of steps, but it comes to a process that I'm used to and I'm working with. And what that did was it took just that segment, just conditioned the audio and got it to the maximum volume level throughout. And then I did the same for the other pieces. This is the interview. And this is something that we're not supposed to talk about right here. And this is Doug's credits for the show. I run those through the same processes. That way, everything, when I finally do piece it together, I've got all the spoken word in the same volume level, and I don't have to worry about, and I keep control of the music and stuff like that. So that is what I do there. Okay. The reason why you thought that Levelator didn't work on a newer Mac OS is because we had a guy who tried to use it on a very old model that he upgraded. I think he'd only upgraded to El Dorado or whatever version it was, and it couldn't work. And there was a big discussion there about how to get it to work. I don't know if he ever did, but I think, anyway, don't worry about it. Levelator is fantastic if you're on a Mac. I hear it still works on Windows, but I can't guarantee that because I don't have a Windows machine to test it on. All right, so let me get to another. Do you use the same batch process for all the episodes in RX6? Yes, mostly. RX6, let me just bring that up real quick. And this is supposed to be an Audacity webinar, so this is just not where I wanted to go with it. But this is RX6, and I can just bring in an audio file, and I've got all these wonderful tools. This has a great breath control option, which takes some of the breaths down. And I've got mouth declick. This takes care of a lot of the in the back of your throat. I've got tons of that, and it drives me nuts. So I try to help my clients' guests by taking that as well. There's a nice little EQ. You can take out the bottom and the top. Those are the ones I use probably the most. De-reverb, fantastic for those who don't wear earbuds. No, I'm sorry, not that they don't wear earbuds. This is D-Reverb is the one you use when they are you have guests speaking to their laptops. No microphones. Deplosive, you might use that as well. Anyway, yes, I run those through. Mostly, I go through a batch process for only two things: mouth declick and breath control. Mouth declick and breath control. That's about it. So there are some of those functions that you can use as a plugin inside of Audacity, but they are not as efficient. Sometimes it takes like 2 to 3 times longer to process in Audacity than it is if you were just to use, just export it real quick and put it into RX6. If the interview is only 12 minutes long, it's not worth doing. But if it's, a 60-minute project, then it's worth taking it out of Audacity, running it through RX6, putting it back in. And that's actually what I'm going to show you here is, this is a project that I opened up. This girl's audio on the bottom was really quiet. Now I could simply just use the amplify here, which actually I did, and I did bring it up to this level. I mean, you should have seen the original. Where's my original? Let me show you the original real quick. Yeah, that was the original volume. So I amplified it, but that also, again, amplifies the room noise. So I think I ran some noise reduction. In fact, let me double check that.
More.
Okay. There isn't too much. So there is, unfortunately, I don't think she's wearing earbuds. No, she is. Anyway, there is some noise here that would have to go away. Sometimes Levelator will take care of that for me. As you can see down here, this version here is of the one I just highlighted. And you can see it's kind of taken away some of that noise because the Levelator, I wouldn't say it doesn't work like a gate, but it obviously really took down a lot of that noise. But that's why I wanted to show you this. Let me go ahead and open this all the way up. This is the host on the top track. This is the guest, and I just amplified it. This is the guest now at the bottom where I ran it through Levelator to bring the volume up. And I found it also brings, if it's really loud, it also helps bring that down, which I really like that. But sometimes it doesn't do everything, so you just kind of run through and take care of the mess and get rid of the earbud rustle and all that fun stuff. And so I'm going to go ahead and take away this one here. And yeah, okay, so let's just go ahead and unless anybody has any, Jennifer doesn't trust anymore. That's fine. Doesn't trust Levelator anymore. Okay, let me go ahead and start this. And I can tell you the host doesn't need too much editing, but I have no idea what the guest is. I just got this prepared for you today. So let me just go ahead and I'm going to speed it up too. We're going to go to 1.28 speed.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Work It Heroes podcast. I'm your host, Kaylin Pyle, and I'm here today with Anung Vilay. She owns Courageous Creativity, a place for introverts and homebodies, just like me, to grow and have more adventures. She has fun, quirky apparel, the podcast, The Introverts Bubble. I'm super excited to talk to you about being an introvert. And she also has digital downloads to help with introverts and homebodies.
Okay, there's something there I could fix.
Downloads to help with
I mean, I get the whole thing, but let me just shorten it.
Downloads to help with introverts and homebodies like me.
I get rid of the at the end of her with. It was with let's see if we fix that.
Digital downloads to help with introverts and homebodies like me. So welcome to the show, Anung.
Not bad. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Epic fail. Epic fail. Guess what I forgot to do? I forgot to sync lock the tracks together. This little symbol on the second track where I did not select indicates that the tracks are locked together, but I didn't lock them. So I'm going to do some undo here, and that way I can go back and make sure that I get it locked.
With
I might just be able to get rid of that whole thing.
To help with introverts and homebodies like me. So welcome to the show, Anung.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, that fixed the problem. Okay, let's go.
Where are you joining us from today? Twin Cities, Minnesota. I like saying that because I've moved so much that I've been like in almost every city in the Twin Cities pretty much.
Okay, so there's a big gap here. I'm going to take that out.
Nice. So wait, hold on. There's Twin Cities, so doesn't that mean there's two? So Twin Cities right? Means Minneapolis, St. Paul, but when you talk about that, it's like the surrounding area as well. So it could be like...
Okay, well, there's really nothing here to show you right now. I mean, the first minute, there's only been a couple edits, so that's pretty fantastic. I want to open it up here to questions. I mean, I've been doing this for half an hour now. If you got any other specific questions about it, I mean, there's so many different pieces to talk about, but that's just the things that are on my head and the things right in front of me right now. And every time I've done this with somebody, they said, okay, I've learned a lot. And I think that's fantastic because I want you guys to be able to edit faster too. So type in your questions or unmute your mic and ask. I'd be glad to ask. Okay, Jennifer, will just keep practicing. You want to be as fast as me? Just keep practicing. I didn't get this way in 2 years. I certainly have exponentially sped things up since I instituted keyboard shortcuts and since I started doing this full time rather than just part time in a hotel room while I was traveling during the day job. So yeah, you can do this. You can do this and get as fast as I can. Anybody else want to ask any questions? So I'm going to keep the chat window. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to keep it off to my right-hand side over here, and I'll keep an eye on that. Actually, I'll move it up so I can see it better. And if anybody else types in a question, I'll answer it right away, but I'm just going to keep editing until you tell me to stop.
Nice. So wait, hold on. There's Twin Cities, so doesn't that mean there's two?
So Twin Cities
right?
means Minneapolis, St. Paul, but when you talk about that, it's like the surrounding area as well. So it could be like Bloomington, Richfield, Rosedale, Southtown, like all those areas right there. All those areas right there. So it's a big, like the big area that's the big area that's the actual cities and the surrounding.
All right, the popping in from Zoom is really driving me crazy. I got to figure out what this said here.
Big area that's the actual cities and the surrounding.
Oh, that's the
big area that's the actual cities and the surrounding suburbs.
There we go.
Nice. Okay, I had no idea. What you don't know, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So Anung, tell us about yourself.
Okay, so you said so twice. I'm going to take out the first so. Nobody's asking any questions, so I'll keep going.
So Anung, tell us about yourself. What do you do? What is
About yourself? What do you do? What is courageous creativity?
Okay, she keeps saying things twice.
What do you do? What is courageous? What is courageous? What do you do? What is courageous creativity?
Well,
Man, this popping from Zoom is driving me nuts.
So Anung, tell us about yourself. What do you do? What is courageous creativity?
Well, it started off as a blog, more for myself, to kind of get myself out there. I wanted to build it to have it as my own.
All right, I'm going to show you another trick here that'll save you time overall. Obviously, this person stops and thinks or takes a big, long breath, but I'm not seeing it, so I think it's just they stop and they're very purposeful with their speaking. So I'll just select all of this here, and I'm going to do what's called truncate silence. I use the compress accept silence. There's two versions, truncate detected silence and compress. Truncate would mean anything bigger than whatever you decide the duration is, cut it down to this duration instead. Compress means anything that's longer than this, compress it by a ratio. So if I had a duration of anything more than 2 seconds, truncate it down to 1 second, that would mean it would cut it, down to 1 second. Every big gap that would be in this file, every 2 seconds of silence would then be, cut down to 1 second. Fantastic. But if I use the compression, the compress one, if I want to take 2 seconds and compress it down to, we'll say 25%, well, that takes 2 seconds and it compresses it to 0.5 seconds. 2 divided by or multiplied by 25% is half a second. Or better yet, let me use an example of it's 1 second, I can compress, I can truncate down to 0.5 seconds. Or if it's 1 second and I compress it down to 0.25 seconds. And I just find that compression is better. Anything more than 0.4 seconds I found gets to be like, okay, what are they going to say next? I'm waiting, I'm impatient. I want to hear it. And then anywhere from 35 to 40% of that space. So anything above 0.4 seconds, Audacity is going to look at and it's going to say, hey, I want to shorten that. Steve, what do you want me to shorten it to? Okay, compress it down to 40% of the size that it currently is. And that way it keeps a rhythm, it keeps a cadence, but it doesn't totally remove all the gaps. It doesn't make them sound unnatural. It just speeds up the conversation. All right, and I think I've got and here's a problem with my host is wearing earbuds.
Believe me.
Let me get rid of some of that.
I've learned that after years.
Yeah, here she's wearing earbuds. You hear that? Yep, those are earbuds. Okay, rustling on the pavement or on the thing. All right, so let me do the truncate silence and make sure that worked. Sometimes Audacity is weird. If I selected that top part but I truncated the bottom, it might shorten and chop up this little piece of audio here. So okay, so that actually works. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing that. This is going to save me a lot of time because I can truncate silence all day long. And that just saved me, another 10 seconds there. And that's because this person has a pattern of speaking that way. Okay, anyway, that's just some of the bigger ones I've gotten taken care of there. Okay, so I'm just go back here. Yes, the dreaded tell us about yourself question. Yeah. All right, any other questions, folks? I'm gonna probably shut this down in 5 minutes. So if you've got any questions, please ask them now. If you're interested, I actually just sent an email to a couple of people that I know have been interested in doing this, but if you're interested, I do have a class I just call it the Podcast Editors class. And if you want to get involved in that, I'm going to have classes there, four scheduled 1-hour sessions where I do this with you and 4 others. I might have 5 others. I might have a limit. I might limit the class to 6. But the class will be starting in the middle of June. I haven't decided on what date and time yet, or the day of the week and the time yet. But I'm going to start that thing in the middle of June and end up at the end of middle of July. So for example, the last 2 times I've had it, it was always Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, which is 8 o'clock Central, 6 p.m. on the West Coast. And we did that for 4 1-hour times. And I always stayed a little bit later too, because we might just be getting into something and want to spend them, give them as much time as they need to get what we're teaching in that class. But if you're interested in that, it's going to be $3.99. And if you want to go and see a little more information about it, I've got an online application form you can fill out. And again, that's going to be at stevestewart.me/apply. stevestewart.me/apply. And you can go and I pretty much do things like this, but it's a lot more organized and a lot more in depth. And then there's homework assigned to you too. So you get to practice, and you get to practice with the examples that we used in the class. And then there's a bonus one too, which is how I work with clients. So I talk a little bit more about, communications, how to, I use email for some, Slack for another, Facebook messengers for one, sharing passwords. How do the clients share a password with you if they have a Libsyn account without giving you the password? Invoicing, collecting payments, income taxes, and all that type of stuff I put into a bonus lesson. And then of course there's a little bit of one-on-one coaching that comes after that as well. So if you're interested in that, check it out. The information is at stevestewart.me/apply, APPLY. And then you can fill out the form if you really are interested down there. All right, any other questions? How long would it take you to edit and polish an hour-long sound file? I'm just going to use this as an example. This is a 30-minute file, so we'll just double that after I answer the question. So 30 minutes. This one will take me, because the host is very well spoken, it depends on the guest. But with the guest, it might take from the time I take their original file, do the conditioning, and then actually export the MP3. It's all said and done. And there's no real complicated segment transitions. Like I might slap on an intro, outro, and that's about it. I would say it's going to take me an hour and 15 minutes. So, of course, the converting and the tagging and that stuff only, that doesn't, you can't double that. So we'll say for an hour long, it's going to be at least 2 hours in the most cases. And then it's really affected by how many times I go and check Facebook. So we got to make sure that we truthfully answer the question. 1 hour will take me 6 if I look at Facebook. So yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Any other questions? Anybody want to pop in and ask some questions? Open up the mic. I believe you guys, can you guys open up your mic? Has anybody tried and haven't been able to do it? I have this thing set so you can't, but I believe you still can, because I've had people do it on me before. Silence is deadly. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit the stop on the record. So I'm going to thank everybody who's watching the replay. I'm going to hang around a little bit longer for the people who are live in case they have any other questions. But again, if you want to check out the class that's coming up, go to stevestewart.me/apply. And if you want to check out the shortcuts, the keyboard shortcuts that I use in Audacity, go to stevestewart.me/Audacity shortcuts. stevestewart.me Audacity shortcuts. It's a list of the keyboard shortcuts that I use. So, you know, Q is, what is Q? Q is play at speed, right? No, I forget what Q is. Anyway, W is play at speed. E is to zoom out. I'm not sharing my screen anymore. You're not seeing this. Anyway, you know, you can see what that is by going to stevestewart.me/Audacity shortcuts.